Now, there is something about a legislative process that is becoming a bit confusing for me. And if anybody can explain it, I would really appreciate it. Yesterday and today, it was reported that the House of Representatives had dropped a state police bill and was now considering President Bola Tinubu's own version of the bill. Now, when I heard that news, it was a bit disappointing for me. Disappointing and sad because how does a National Assembly, how do lawmakers throw away the work that they had done meticulously and now considering another bill similar to theirs? Remember, this bill had passed third reading. And so for them to throw away that bill and was now considering the president's own version of the bill is something I need clarification on. Now, what this has done is to bring to fore our legislative process, which for me becomes or has become unclear as time goes on. Now, if you go back to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026, there was a time that, that both chambers needed to harmonize their versions of the bill. Remember that the Senate actually gave a condition for electronic transmission, while the House just gave it a free pass, and there was need to harmonize it. So we were waiting for the harmonization committee, the conference committee, to come up with their recommendation. Before you knew what was happening, we didn't really, in public at least, get to know what was the recommendation of the conference committee. But later we got to hear that the bill has been passed both in the Senate and the House of Representatives. That aside, we also had the tax reform bill, of which was trilled with controversy. We saw the lawmakers after the passing of the bill and after the signing, we got to hear that a different version was in circulation and in fact had been tampered with. And we kept asking, at what stage of the legislative process was it tampered with? Was it after the National Assembly passed it? Was it en route to the president's desk? Was it after the president's desk? We never got answers. We were hoping to get answers, but we never got answers. And to think that some of the provisions were quite substantial. They were not something you could say were clerical errors, but we never got answers. I think the House of Representatives set up a committee to look into it, where the meddling, where the tampering started, but we never got answers. And now we're back to the state police bill. And the lawmakers have decided to do away with their own and consider the president's own. Similar thing happened with the Senate. When it happened with the Senate, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not the one understanding this thing. Because I know that the Senate had given the document to the committee, Constitution Review Committee, and they were supposed to come back with their recommendations of which the Senate was supposed to vote on. Midway there, we saw the president bring his own bill. And I'm like, does it happen that the president gets to interrupt a legislative process by presenting a similar bill? But what we saw was them voting with consideration of the president's own version of the bill. And now we have the lower chamber throwing away their own and considering the president's own. And I'm wondering, where does it happen? And it's even more befuddling because we saw the president, throughout the whole legislative process of constitutional amendment, hear the debates around state police and the need to speed it up. And we thought that the president could use his influence to make the lawmakers hasten this up because Nigerians were dying in their numbers. But we never saw that. But when the National Assembly members managed to, reach the substantial level of the process. Then the president brought his own bill. And I'm like, where does this happen? The other time, they also said he presented the National Police Council bill, that it was different, from the early one he presented, because this one will now bring the detail of the whole police bill. That the other one was to ensure that is clearly stipulated that we now have a dual policing system in the country. Regardless, the fact remains that, can the process of legislation be interrupted with a bill outside what the lawmakers are considering? So these are the questions that have been bugging my mind. The president was watching when all the debate was going on, when Nigerians were dying in their numbers, and then nothing was said until the lawmakers began the process. So the question would be, what was the real intention? If the lawmakers cannot be allowed to do their work, why are they lawmakers? Why do you need to interrupt the process? And is the interruption normal? Because that is the crux of the matter for me. Maybe somebody who understands the legislative process can explain it better. But as far as I'm concerned, doing this job for a number of years, I would think that we should be able to grasp the basics of this legislative process. But when it's being complicated by things like this, you begin to wonder whether you even understand the process at all. So if anybody really understands what's going on, perhaps you can actually enlighten us more.